Welcome back to QHSE Talks, where we move beyond compliance checklists and start thinking about safety the way high-performing organizations and leading safety professionals actually practice it, as a structured, integrated management system. If you are preparing for the CSP certification, or if you are already working in HSE leadership, today's topic sits right at the heart of CSP Blueprint 11. When you review Domain 2, Program Management, you'll notice a consistent theme running through Topic 8, Topic 9, and Topic 2. The expectation that safety is not simply a collection of policies or individual programs. Instead, the CSP framework emphasizes recognizing formal management systems like ISO 45001 and ANSI ASSP Z10, understanding the required structural components of effective safety systems, and applying continuous performance evaluation through models like Plan, Do, Check, Act. But here's the critical insight, and this is where many professionals struggle. The CSP exam is not only testing whether you know the names of standards, it's testing whether you understand the philosophy behind them. Because modern safety practice has evolved, we're no longer operating in a world where safety success is measured by how many procedures exist or how thick the safety manual looks on a shelf. Today, safety is expected to function like quality management, like financial governance, like operational excellence, a structured business system designed to identify risks, integrate controls into daily work, and continuously improve performance. And when you step into Domain 3 of CSP Blueprint 11, risk management, you start to see why. Hazard identification, risk analysis, monitoring, and corrective actions cannot operate effectively in isolation. Without a system connecting policies, responsibilities, communication, assurance, and leadership, risk management becomes reactive and fragmented. The blueprint itself quietly reinforces this idea. Risk management processes are inseparable from the management system that supports them. Now, here's where things get interesting. Many organizations genuinely believe they have a safety management system. They have procedures, they have training records, they have programs for confined space, lockout and tagout, PPE, chemical safety, maybe even an audit checklist or two. On paper, everything looks structured. But when you look closer, what often exists is not a system, it's a collection of independent activities. Programs operating in silos, decisions made reactively, improvements happening only after incidents occur. And this is exactly why Chapter 31 becomes so important, not just for CSP preparation, but for professional transformation. It reframes safety from being a compliance obligation into being a management architecture. It introduces the 4 pillars: safety policy, safety risk management, safety assurance, and safety promotion, not as theoretical ideas, but as interconnected mechanisms that create organizational learning and resilience. Because the real power of a safety management system is integration. Integration between leadership commitment and operational execution. Integration between risk analysis and performance monitoring. Integration between human behavior, communication, and technical controls. And most importantly, integration between safety and business strategy itself. This is where Deming's influence and the PDCA cycle become essential. Continuous improvement is not just a concept, but it becomes the operating rhythm of the organization, planning based on data, implementing structured solutions, verifying performance, and acting to refine the system again and again. If you understand PDCA, you begin to understand why modern safety frameworks look the way they do, and why CSP Blueprint 11 emphasizes performance-based thinking rather than static compliance. So, before we dive deeper, I want you, our listener, to pause for a moment and consider something honestly. How does safety exist in your organization today? Is it a coordinated system that drives decisions, or is it a set of disconnected programs that activate only when problems arise? Because answering that question leads us directly into the paradigm shift we want to explore today.
And I think the mission for this QHSE talk, for you, the listener, is to shift a paradigm.
How so?
We need to stop thinking of safety as just a binder on a shelf. You know the one I'm talking about.
Oh, I know it well. It's dusty. It's got a coffee ring on the cover.
And it only comes down off that shelf when an OSHA auditor walks in the front door.
Right. We need to move beyond that and stop thinking of safety as just a list of rules like don't run with scissors.
Exactly. We need to start understanding it as a living, breathing system.
A system. I love that distinction. So let's start right there with the hook. I want to ask you, and I want you, our listener, to really think about this for a second.
Okay.
What is the actual difference between having a safety program and having a safety management system? Is this just corporate speak? Is it just semantics so consultants can charge more money?
It really sounds like semantics, doesn't it? But no, it's fundamentally structural. It's the difference between, say, a grocery list and a full meal plan for the week.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, think of it this way. A safety program might be a list of rules or specific initiatives. So you might have a hearing protection program over here.
Check. Got one of those.
A lockout, tagout program over there, and maybe a confined space program down the hall.
Right. They're all separate things.
There's silos.
Yeah.
They function independently. And you could have a really great hearing conservation program and a, frankly, terrible respiratory protection program in the very same building.
Because they're disconnected. You're just fixing specific problems as they pop up one at a time.
Exactly. But a system, a safety management system, is a platform. It's a unified framework that integrates all of those little programs into the business itself.
So it's the glue.
It's the glue and it's the engine. It connects them to each other. And this is the most important part. It connects them to the actual management of the company. It's the difference between fixing a leak under your sink with some duct tape.
The quick fix.
Right. Versus redesigning the entire plumbing architecture of the house so that leaks just don't happen in the first place.
Okay, let's really unpack this because I think a lot of organizations, they feel like they have a system, but when you look closer, what they really have is just a pile of programs stacked on top of each other in a filing cabinet.
Precisely. And that brings us to the core definition we find in Chapter 31 of Yates.
Yeah.
He defines a safety management system. And the wording is important here.
Okay.
He calls it a comprehensive management system that provides a platform for the integration of safety program elements.
So things like responsibilities, policies, procedures, goals, all that stuff.
All of that. So that the end result, the final outcome, must be continuous improvement in the control of risks.
Continuous improvement. That's the key phrase, isn't it? That implies that you are never, ever done with safety.
You're never done. It's the heartbeat of the entire concept. If you aren't improving, you don't have a system. You just have stagnation. A program can be completed. You can finish a safety week program.
Right.
A system is cyclical. It's designed to evolve as the business evolves, as the risks evolve.
So if we look at Chapter 31 again, Yates lists 5 major goals of an SMS. If we're building this machine, what is it actually supposed to do day to day?
Well, let's list them out because they really provide the roadmap for everything else we're going to talk about today.
Let's do it.
First, it provides a systematic approach to manage risks. It moves you away from gut feeling safety.
Or this is how we've always done it, safety.
Yes.
Yeah.
It moves you away from that and into process-driven safety. Second, it identifies risks and implements effective controls. That's the real nuts and bolts.
Right, finding the hazards and dealing with them.
Third, as we just said, it has to serve as a continuous improvement process.
Yeah.
Fourth, and this one is so crucial, it provides an early means to determine non-compliance.
It's a warning system.
It's a warning system. It tells you that something is going wrong before the accident happens.
That is incredibly valuable because by the time the accident happens, it's too late.
It's far too late. And fifth, it provides areas of specific responsibilities. It completely eliminates the "I thought he was doing it" excuse.
The finger pointing.
No more finger pointing. It's all defined.
I want to use an analogy here because this whole thing reminds me of a company's financial system.
Go on.
You don't run a business by just walking around saying, "Hey, everyone, try to save money today." That's a slogan. That's a program.
Right, it's a poster on the wall.
A financial system, on the other hand, has accounting. It has auditing, forecasting, checks and balances. You literally cannot lose $1 million without a giant red light flashing somewhere in that system.
That is a perfect analogy. Absolutely perfect. In a financial system, you don't wait until you're bankrupt to finally look at the numbers.
Of course not.
You have a controller. You have external audits. You have daily cash flow reports. An SMS integrates safety into the business structure in the exact same way that accounting is integrated.
It stops safety from being a sidecar attached to the motorcycle of the business.
I love that image. The sidecar.
Yeah, something that just drags along for the ride but doesn't actually help drive.
Exactly. An SMS makes safety part of the engine itself. It helps steer, it provides power.
Okay, great. We've established what it is. Now let's break down the anatomy of the system. According to the source material in Chapter 31, there are 4 major components, pillars, really, of an SMS. Where do we start?
We have to start with the foundation. Component 1 is safety policy.
Which, I have to be honest, that sounds boring. The policy. It just sounds like a piece of paper on the break room wall that's been there for 10 years and is curling at the edges.
And it often is, unfortunately. That's the reality in a lot of places. But in a true SMS, the safety policy is management's tangible commitment. And Yates makes a very specific point here that I think is the ultimate litmus test for whether a policy is real or just wallpaper.
Okay, what's the test?
The statement must include a commitment to allocate financial and human resources.
So put your money where your mouth is.
That's it. Plain simple. You cannot have a policy that says safety is priority number 1 and then turn around and give the safety department a $0 budget.
That's not a policy. That's a lie.
It's a lie. The policy is the contract between management and the workers. It's management saying, we will protect you, and here is the budget, the staffing, the equipment to prove it.
That puts a completely different spin on it. It's not just words, it's authorization for spending. It's head count.
Correct. And the policy also defines the organizational structure. Who is responsible for what? Yates notes that the safety manager should be at the head of the SMS structure. But, and this is a huge distinction, their role is not to be the safety cop.
Right, we're not looking for someone to run around writing tickets for not wearing safety glasses.
No, the safety manager is there to monitor compliance with the system and to take corrective action quickly when the system breaks down. They are the system administrator. They're the guardian of the process.
And the book mentions procedures here too. But this isn't just how to wear a hard hat or how to operate the forklift, right?
Correct. Of course, those are important, but this is talking about procedures for the system itself.
Meta procedures.
It's exactly. How do we do record keeping? What's our auditing procedure? What is the step-by-step process for managing non-compliance? It's the rules of the game for how the whole system operates.
Okay, so we have the policy, the foundation, the contract. What's the second component?
Safety risk management, or SRM. If the policy is the foundation, this is the action component. This is where the rubber really meets the road.
So this describes the actual day-to-day process of dealing with hazards.
Yes. It's a cycle within the larger system. It involves describing the system or process you're looking at, identifying all the potential hazards, analyzing the associated risk.
So how likely is it? How bad could it be?
Precisely. Then controlling that risk, and finally monitoring the control to make sure it's still working. And Yates points out that this has to involve both qualitative and quantitative assessment methods.
Can you explain the difference there for our listener?
Sure. Qualitative is descriptive. It's experience-based. It's walking the floor and saying, you know what, that stack of boxes looks dangerous. It's using your professional judgment.
A gut feeling.
The educated gut feeling. Quantitative, on the other hand, is data-driven. It's saying this specific task has a 1 in 100 probability of causing a recordable injury based on our historical data and industry benchmarks.
And a robust SMS uses both.
It has to. You need the numbers to justify the budget we just talked about in the policy section. You can't go to the CFO with just a gut feeling.
That makes perfect sense. We've talked about risk assessment in previous sessions, but the key here is that it's framed as a constant churning engine within the system. It's not something you do once a year and then forget about.
Exactly. It has to be dynamic, which leads us directly into the third component, safety assurance.
The watchdog.
The watchdog. I like that. The whole purpose of safety assurance is the early detection of non-compliance and identifying areas for improvement. This is your check engine light.
So this is where the audits and the inspections come in.
Yes. The mechanisms are things like daily or weekly reports from supervisors, formal safety inspections, internal and external audits, and very importantly, employee hazard reporting systems.
So if your safety assurance component is working properly, you should never be surprised by an accident.
You shouldn't. You should have seen the indicators flashing yellow long before they ever turned red.
So let me rephrase that. If you have an accident and everyone in management is genuinely shocked,
your assurance component failed. Period. You were driving the car with your eyes closed.
That's a powerful way to put it. Okay, and the fourth and final component.
Safety promotion. This is the culture piece.
This is the soft stuff that's actually the hard stuff.
It's always the hardest part.
Yeah.
The goal here is gaining widespread acceptance of the entire system. You can have a best designed system in the world on paper.
But if nobody follows it,
it's worthless.
Yeah.
You achieve this through training and communication, and that communication has to be both top-down and bottom up.
What does that look like?
Top down is management clearly and consistently communicating the policy and expectations. Bottom up is creating channels where workers on the floor can report hazards and suggest improvements without fear of reprisal.
And Yates emphasizes ownership here.
He does. By including employees in the process, in hazard identification, in developing solutions, they share ownership of the programs. And management absolutely must put actions to their intentions.
That means walking the walk. If PPE is required, the CEO better be wearing it when they walk on the floor.
100%. If the workforce doesn't buy into this system, if they don't believe management is serious, the whole system is just a theoretical model that exists on a computer server somewhere.
It's a fantasy.
It is. It relies on the people on the floor to actually execute the procedures. If they don't believe in it, the system collapses instantly.
Okay, so we have the 4 pillars: policy, risk management, assurance, and promotion. But these 4 things don't just sit there. They have to move, interact. This brings us to section 3 of our discussion, the engine.
The Deming cycle.
PDCA, plan, do, check, act. It seems like you can't get a safety certification, or really any kind of business certification, without having PDCA tattooed on your arm.
It is ubiquitous for a very good reason. W. Edwards Deming developed this for quality management, helping rebuild Japanese industry after World War II, but it applies so perfectly to safety. It is the absolute heartbeat of any functional SMS.
So let's walk through it, because I think people hear the acronym so often that their eyes just glaze over. What does plan actually look like in the context of an SMS?
Plan isn't just saying our plan is to be safe. It's much more specific. It starts with rigorously defining the problem.
So you need data.
You need data. You have to find the root cause, not just the symptom. You form a team, you collect that data, and you propose very specific solutions. Let's use an example.
Please.
Let's say you have a high rate of back injuries in your shooting department. The plan phase is looking at the injury logs, observing the tasks, measuring the box weights, and realizing the boxes are consistently too heavy for a single person to lift safely. The plan becomes, we will introduce vacuum lift assist devices for all boxes over 50 pounds.
Okay, that's a specific, measurable plan. Then we move to do.
Do is execution. Simple as that. You implement the plan, you buy the lift assists, you get them installed, you train the entire shipping team on how to use them safely and effectively.
And then check. This is where a lot of well-intentioned programs fall apart, isn't it? They plan and do, and then they just assume it worked and walk away to the next problem.
Precisely. Check is the most skipped step. It means measuring the results. You have to go back to the data. Did the lift assists actually reduce or eliminate the back injuries?
And you have to look for unintended consequences.
Absolutely. Or, and this happens all the time, did they slow down the process so much that the workers have developed an unsafe workaround to avoid using them? Or did the devices introduce a new pinch point hazard? You have to validate the solution with real data.
And assuming the data shows it worked, we get to act.
Act is the standardization phase. If the check phase proved the solution was effective, you standardize it. It becomes the new way of doing business. You update the procedures, you share the lessons learned with other departments. And here's where it gets really interesting. Yates points out that this is also where you raise the bar.
Raising the bar, what is that? Whoa.
It means you select a new problem. The cycle is continuous. I like to visualize PDCA not as a flat circle. It just goes round and round in the same spot.
Right.
I see it as a spiral staircase.
Yes.
Every time you complete a full PDCA cycle, you are one level higher than you were before. You've eliminated one risk, so now you have the capacity to move on to the next one and the next one after that.
That's a fantastic visual. It's a spiral of improvement. You're literally climbing out of the danger zone one step at a time. Now let's look at the different flavors of SMS, because as Yates outlines in Chapter 31, there isn't just one single safety management system. There are different frameworks, different brands, if you will.
Right? It's like buying a car. They all have engines and wheels, but a Ford is different from a Toyota, which is different from a Tesla. The major frameworks discussed in the text are OHSACE 1-800-1, ISO 4501, ANSI Z10, and ILO OSH 2001.
Let's start with OHSACE 1801. For a long, long time, this was the big one.
It really was. It's a British standard. It's important to note it wasn't U.S. developed, but it was very widely recognized and adopted globally. Its structure focuses heavily on hazard identification, risk assessment, and then control of those hazards. Very direct.
But there's a critique of it in the source material, isn't there? A reason the world has started to move on from it.
There is. The expert critique looking back is that OHSAS 1801 focuses primarily on hazard reduction. It's very operational. It's very much focused on the factory floor. It looks at the workplace and says, there's a slippery spot, put down a mat. Or there's a hole, cover the hole.
And how does that contrast with its successor, ISO 45001?
ISO 45001 is the modern standard, developed by the International Organization for Standardization, and it represents a significant philosophical shift. It moves the focus from just hazard management to a much more comprehensive risk management.
What's the practical difference between those two things, hazard versus risk?
Context. That's the one-word answer. ISO 45001 forces you to look at the context of the organization.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means considering all the internal and external environments that can affect safety. Stakeholder needs, your customers, your suppliers, the community you operate in, and of course all the regulatory requirements. It asks the bigger question, how does safety fit into our overall business strategy and sustainability?
So ISO 45001 basically integrates safety into the boardroom, whereas OHSS 18001 tended to keep safety on the factory floor.
That's a very good way of putting it, yes. It elevates the conversation to a strategic level. It aligns safety with overall business health and sustainability.
We also have ANSI Z10 mentioned, which is the American standard.
Correct. ANSI Z10 is a voluntary consensus standard developed with the AIHA. Its philosophy is interesting because it puts management leadership and employee participation right at step one. It's the very first thing it talks about.
Which speaks to the work culture here, maybe.
I think so. It recognizes that in the American work culture, if you don't have active leadership and genuine buy-in from the employees on the floor, the whole system is just an academic exercise. It will fail.
And briefly, ILO OSH 2001.
That's the global labor view. It was developed by the International Labor Organization, and its main driver is promoting decent work for everyone, everywhere. It's built very, very heavily around that PDCA model we just talked about.
So it seems like regardless of the flavor, whether you're driving the Ford or the Toyota, the engine inside is still that PDCA cycle.
Exactly. The goal is always the same, continuous improvement of worker health and safety.
Now, I want to move to section 5 of our discussion, which pulls from chapter 38 of the Yates text. This is about a specific subsystem that I think is, well, it's arguably the most critical for preventing catastrophic disasters.
Management of change, MOCA.
MOCA. And if PDCA is the engine, what is this?
I'd say MOCA is the steering wheel you have to use when you hit an unexpected bump in the road.
So why does change, with a capital C, need its own dedicated management system? Why can't I just, change a valve or move a piece of equipment if I think it's a good idea?
Because any modification to your established processes, equipment, or structures can introduce new, completely unintentional hazards. History, especially in the chemical and process industries, is literally written in blood from accidents where someone, usually with good intentions, changed a process without formally reviewing the consequences.
Like what?
You change a pump to a more powerful model, and now the pressure downstream is too high, and a pipe that was perfectly safe yesterday bursts 3 rooms away.
Right. Yates shares a really vivid but much simpler example in the book The Warehouse Story. Can you walk us through that? Because I think it perfectly illustrates the trap of fixing something without a system.
It's a classic case of good intentions gone wrong. So you had a warehouse with a FIFO block storage setup, first in, first out. And they had a serious problem. Inventory tip-over hazards. They were stacking these heavy containers, and they were getting wobbly.
Very scary stuff. You do not want a ton of product falling on a worker.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
So the safety team jumps into action and comes up with an initial solution. They decide to install a physical guardrail to separate the pedestrian walkways from the large stacks.
Which on paper is a fantastic safety move. It's a high-level engineering control. You're physically separating the hazard from the person.
Exactly. They identified a hazard, they implemented a control, PDCA, right, done.
Oh.
But they didn't have a formal management of change process. They just went ahead and installed the rail. Then the production manager walks into the warehouse and immediately realizes,
What?
the forklifts can't deliver the raw materials to the workstations because the workstations are now behind the brand new guardrail. The rail physically blocked the path. A major, oops, production ground to a complete halt. They couldn't get materials to the production line. So what did they have to do?
They had to modify the rail.
They had to take a cutting torch to their brand new, expensive guardrail and cut openings in it.
Which probably weakened the integrity of the rail, or at the very least, created new pinch points where the rail was cut.
Precisely. The lesson here is crystal clear. A proper management of change process would have brought the production manager, the safety manager, the maintenance team, and probably a forklift operator together in a room before one piece of steel was ever welded.
They would have looked at the drawing.
They would have reviewed the plan on paper.
Right.
The production manager would have said, wait a minute, my forklifts can't fit through there. And they would have redesigned the solution on paper for free instead of welding tons of steel into the concrete and then having to pay again to cut it out.
It's that same theme again. It's the difference between fixing a leak with duct tape and redesigning the plumbing. MOS forces you to look at the whole system, not just the single problem in front of your face.
It does. It forces you to ask that critical question. If we do X, what happens to Y and Z?
And the text is clear that all the major standards, ISO, OSHA's Process Safety Management Standard, they all require a formal MOSI process. But there's an exception, right? The replacements in kind.
Yes. If you are replacing a broken pump with the exact same make and model of pump, or a valve with the exact same spec of valve, you don't need to trigger a full MOSI review.
Common sense.
It is. MOSI is for changes other than exact replacements. But you have to be very, very careful about how you define exact.
Right, because it's basically the same chemical. It's probably a famous last word in your industry.
It absolutely is. It's just a different brand can lead to a catastrophic chemical reaction you never expected.
Let's shift gears to Section 6, Measuring Performance. We're jumping to Chapter 36 here, and I love the quote that really frames this whole section. Peter Drucker's famous line, "You can't manage what you can't measure."
It's the golden rule of management in any field. If you don't have data, if you don't measure it, you're just guessing. You're flying blind.
But Yates argues pretty strongly that in safety, we're very often measuring the wrong things.
We are. We have a fundamental dilemma in safety measurement. The traditional safety metrics are things like TCIR, the total case incident rate or DART rate.
The numbers from the OSHA logs, the numbers everyone reports up the chain.
The OSHA logs, exactly. And the problem is, these are lagging indicators. Meaning they measure failure, they measure injuries that have already happened. Yates uses a great analogy for this. He says managing safety with only lagging indicators is like trying to drive a car by looking only in the rearview mirror.
It tells you exactly where you've been and the mess you left behind.
But it tells you absolutely nothing about the brick wall that's 10 feet in front of your windshield.
So what's the alternative? If we're supposed to stop looking in the rearview mirror, where do we look?
We have to shift our focus to leading indicators. These are proactive metrics. They measure positive activities that are designed to achieve objectives before harm occurs. They measure prevention, not failure.
Okay, give us some concrete examples from the text. What should we be counting instead of just injuries?
We should be counting the number of safety observations or near-miss reports submitted by employees. A high number there is a good thing. It means people are engaged.
It means they're looking.
They're looking. We should count the number of safety audits performed by leadership. We should track management by walking around. How many hours are managers actually on the floor, observing work and talking to people about safety?
And my personal favorite from the text, I have to highlight this one because it's so simple and so brilliant.
The percentage of safety-related work orders completed on time.
I love that one.
It's a fantastic metric. Think about what it tells you. If a worker reports a safety hazard, a broken light in a staircase, a loose guardrail, and your maintenance team fixes it within 24 hours.
That's a leading indicator of a healthy, functioning system.
It shows the system works. It shows management is responsive. Now flip that. If that same work order sits open for 6 months, that is a powerful leading indicator of an upcoming accident.
Yeah.
And it's a leading indicator of terrible morale because it screams to the workers that management doesn't care.
And it connects the maintenance department directly to the safety department. It breaks down that silo.
Exactly. The whole goal of measurement is to answer two questions. Where are we right now relative to what do we want to be? And if you only look at injury rates, you might have 0 injuries for a year just because you got lucky.
Woof.
Leading indicators tell you if you are actually safe or if you were just fortunate for the time being.
That is a critical distinction. Safety versus luck. An SMS is designed to systematically eliminate luck from the equation.
That is the ultimate goal, yes.
Right.
To make safety a predictable outcome of your processes.
Okay, moving into our final section, Section 7, we have the system design, we have the metrics to track it. How do we verify it's real? We're talking about auditing from Chapter 37.
Right. Auditing is how you know the SMS is a real living thing and not just a paper tiger. It's the check part of PDCA on a macro scale. And Yates outlines 3 fundamental methods for auditing a system.
Method 1, document review.
This is usually the first step. You sit down with the binders. Do the records match the requirements of the system? Are the inspection forms actually filled out? Are the training records up to date?
The boring part.
It can be, but you'd be absolutely shocked how many perfect systems have cabinets full of blank forms. Or, even worse, forms that are filled out with the exact same data every single day, which is a huge red flag for pencil whipping.
Just checking the box. Okay, method 2, employee interviews.
This is the truth serum. This is where you find out if the system is real or not. You go to the floor. You talk to the people doing the work. You ask them, what's the safety policy? What are you supposed to do if the emergency alarm goes off? Who do you report a hazard to?
And if the policy is written in gold leaf in the CEO's office, but the person on the forklift doesn't know what it says,
then the policy doesn't exist. It's a phantom. It protects no one.
that's a harsh but necessary truth. If a policy is written but no one knows it, it doesn't exist.
It's just an artifact. And the final method, method 3, site conditions and inspection, the visual investigation. You walk the floor with your own eyes, you look for physical hazards, you look for evidence of breakdowns in the system, piles of clutter, bypassed machine guards, fire extinguishers blocked by pallets. This connects right back to that concept of MBWO management by walking around.
The text mentions an anecdote about the constant struggle of scheduling MBWA time for busy managers.
It's a real struggle. Managers are busy. They have emails, production meetings, budgets to worry about. But Yates emphasizes that there is no substitute for visible leadership. Managers getting out of the office, putting on their PPE, and walking the floor improves visibility and communication in a way nothing else can. It sends the message, management cares.
And if the only time the workforce ever sees the safety manager is when someone is bleeding,
You have a failed culture. You're seen as the Grim Reaper, not a partner in the business.
that connects all the way back to the promotion pillar we talked about at the very beginning.
It's all connected. The policy drives the risk management. The assurance, which is the auditing, checks on the risk management. The promotion ensures everyone participates. And the PDCA cycle is the engine that keeps it all moving forward, spiraling upward.
It really is a system. The word is perfect. It's an ecosystem.
That's a great word for it. It's a business ecosystem where every part relies on all the others to survive and thrive.
So, wow. We have covered a lot of ground in this QHSE talk. We've defined the SMS based on Chapter 31. We've looked at the 4 pillars, the PDCA engine, the different frameworks, the critical role of MMSA, how to measure it, and how to audit it. Let's zoom out for the outro. What is the big overarching takeaway here?
The big takeaway is the evolution. It's the journey from hazard reduction to comprehensive risk management. We're moving away from a reactive stance, just fixing things that break,
Putting out fires.
to a proactive stance, managing the totality of risk so that things don't break in the first place. We are designing safety into the very DNA of the company.
And Yates connects us to an even bigger, more modern business concept in Chapter 35, sustainability.
Yes. And it's so important to understand this. Sustainability isn't just about the environment or recycling or green energy. In a business context, it's about the ability of the business to meet its present needs without compromising the ability to meet its future needs.
How does safety fit in?
A strong SMS is a core pillar of sustainability. It protects the company's most valuable resources, its human resources, its people, and its physical assets. If you burn down your factory or you disable your skilled workforce, you are not a sustainable business. You're out of business.
Safety is business survival.
At its core, yes. It preserves the capacity of the organization to continue to generate value today and tomorrow.
I want to leave our listeners with a final provocative thought, something that wasn't maybe explicitly in the text, but that builds on everything we've discussed here today.
Okay, let's try this. If your organization has a perfect, beautifully written safety policy, I mean, it's a masterpiece. It's framed on the wall. The CEO signed it.
Okay.
But a walk through your site reveals that employees aren't wearing their PPE or that they're routinely bypassing machine guards to make production faster. You don't just have a compliance problem.
It's not just an employee discipline problem either.
It's not. You have a management system failure.
Oof, that hits hard. It puts the ball squarely back in management's court.
It absolutely should.
Yeah.
So the question to you, the learner, is this. Are you managing safety or are you just reacting to accidents? Because the system doesn't care about your intentions. It only cares about your actions and your results.
That is the question of the day, a perfect place to end. Thank you for joining us on this session of QHSE Talks.
Thank you.
We encourage you to go look at your own safety manuals, your own procedures, not as a set of rules, but as parts of a living, breathing system, and ask yourself, is it working?
Keep learning.
We'll see you next time.